Hello and welcome. And we are excited. The feedback from the last two episodes from our new podcast, The Process, Jeremy Fouts and I really felt that this is something that was positive, not only for families and athletes, but for coaches as well. And Jeremy, I'm really excited to be able to continue down this path because based on the feedback and the responses that I'm getting from direct messages from parents, from athletes, and more importantly, college coaches, seems like we've kind of struck a nerve.
Absolutely, Walter. And I'm really excited about this one. I know you doing what you do on a daily basis, helping athletes, find homes in the college. You hear this over and over and over, what we're going to talk about on this episode. And that is what are some three things that the college coaches are more concerned about than your players' stats? And I know you hear this all the time when coaches or parents will call you up and tell you about how awesome their kid is. They're back 400. They had so many stolen bases. And I get the same thing that comes to me when they're wanting me to build meal plans. They try to tell me how awesome their stats are. Well, I'm excited about this episode, Walter, because more than anything, these college coaches are worried about, is this kid able to compete at the next level? So this podcast, the last two, has been phenomenal. I've got amazing feedback like yourself, but this one I'm really, really excited about.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've talked to Billy Salento at Wake Forest, Matt Hobbs at Arkansas, Kevin Mulvey at Villanova. We've talked to a lot of college coaches. The common thread is that they all, to a man, will say to me, Walt, and this is when I'm asking, what advice would you give to the 27, 28, and now the 29 class? And they all say to a man, lessons are great. Travel is great. Getting into the weight room, all that's great. But you need to make sure that your athletes are making the investment with regard to nutrition and size and strength. They come as a 3-pack. So let's start there. We get so many people that are hyper-focused, Jeremy, on exit velocity, spin rates and all these types of things. But if we're listening to the college coaches, they're telling their athletes, make sure physically you are prepared to compete with your peers at the collegiate level. And they're going to be 20 to 24, sometimes 25-year-old men that are in that window of 190 to 215, 230. So let's start there. Really, when we're starting, more importantly, when you're starting with younger athletes, how do you get them to understand the value of the meal prep along with the supplementation that will help them build that foundation of strength for that collegiate level?
Yeah, I mean, the best way for a younger person to really understand it, Walter, is talk about just the physics behind it. I mentioned this in the first episode. Physics cannot be disputed. You and I know gravity works. We go to the top of a building, we drop something, it's going to fall. Physics is the same way with a kid that's 150 pounds versus 180 pounds. They're going to increase 5 to 7 to 8 mile per hour on their swing and their velocity across the diamond, which on the bat speed alone is going to make a difference of that ball traveling 25 to 30 feet further. So I was talking to an athlete last night, building him a meal plan, and I just told him, I was like, hey, man, I believe in working on skills. I believe in getting in the gym. But there's two things, no matter how much you go to the gym, how much you work on your skills, if you are not really conscious of being in a calorie surplus, at least of a 500 calorie surplus, and if you're not real conscious of your macronutrients, how much protein, how much carbs, how much fats you're having on a daily basis. And also, Walter, I didn't even talk about this in the first two episodes, but when I build a meal plan, I make a macronutrient analysis on all of the foods that they are putting in their body. Are they getting the essential vitamins and minerals that they need for making sure that they're sleeping good, they're feeling good, they're able to recover? And I'm telling all of these athletes, if you do not take care of the nutrition side, you can work out 2 to 3 times a day. It does not matter. And then the supplementation, I did a podcast, launched it this morning, talking about the safety and the science behind creatine. Creatine is not disputable if it works anymore. Creatine is safe. There's been over 1,000 clinical research studies with humans on creatine. Creatine started and was discovered back in the 1880s, and then it started becoming more popular in the 1920s, and then in 1990s when Barcelona and Olympic sports, then it started becoming really, really popular. And at the time, though, Walter, it was labeled as a gym supplement. A lot of people thought, well, is it a steroid? No, it's not a steroid. Creatine is coming from 3 branch chain amino acids is what it is. And our body already produces 1 to 2 grams a day. We already get 1 to 2 grams a day if we're eating a lot of meat. But our body demands so much more. It's not introducing a foreign substance into the body. Our body knows what to do with it. We're able to regenerate ATP quicker. We're able to get more out of our lifts, which it's not going to put muscle on you, creatine don't. It allows you to be able to lift more, to sprint more, to be able to hit those longer workouts, which is then in return going to help you put on lean mass. So that's why with all of my athletes, yes, we get their nutrition dialed in. Teach them about creatine. Teach them about a good hydrate, electrolytes. Teach them about a good grass-fed whey protein with collagen proteins to make sure it's digested in their system really quick to help stimulate muscle growth and muscle recovery. So the athletes that are paying attention to nutrition, you and I was talking about several of your athletes a few minutes ago, a lefty down in Georgia, I think is where he's from, has gained 10 pounds. We've got another athlete of yours in Virginia has gained 8 or 9 pounds in a couple, about 3 weeks. So those athletes that really get it at a young age, they're going to be the ones setting at their senior year and be looking and figuring out which offer they're going to take. And I know you and I are dealing with this on a daily basis of our computers full of the kids that have unbelievable stats at 150, 160 pounds their senior year, but they're not getting any offers because they did not dial in their nutrition, understand supplementation, and take care of business.
One of the often overlooked aspects of nutrition and strength is the physical presence, meaning physical presence when you're in a locker room and you're looking around, particularly at the college level after high school, you look around and you see these physically imposing. Now, they're not Schwarzenegger, they're not Ronnie Coleman, they're really elite high level athletes. And that gives a lot of self-confidence to athletes to know, like, okay, I look like that guy. I am prepared to compete with that guy. And oftentimes, Jeremy, when we start talking about nutrition, we often go through okay, this is going to help you hit a ball further, throw a ball harder, et cetera. But in reality, one of the biggest components to physical presence is confidence. So let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of the athletes that you work out, do you see them kind of get a little bit more confident?
Oh, not only there's 2 sides to the confidence side here, Walter. Number one, it's the mental side.
Right.
Okay. You make a promise to yourself to weigh every morning, to eat everything on a meal plan, to get your water intake, to take your supplements. Then when you start gaining this confidence mentally that I promised myself I would jump out of bed and I already knew what I was going to eat the next morning. I knew what my snack was going to be. I knew I was going to have a 3-to-1 ratio of carb to protein before my lift and after my lift. It creates this mental confidence that you told yourself you are going to do something. You made a promise, and it carries through everything you do, from your academics, your lifts, taking out the trash for your mom, everything. And then we talk about the physical side. Usually within 2 to 3 days of being on a meal plan, my athletes text me. Not only have they gained weight, but they say, man, I'm sleeping amazing. My energy is through the roof. Then next thing that happens, Walter, is a game changer. They're sending me videos of their PRs on the bench press, on the squats. And then they're like, it's literally like someone goes into their system, flips a switch, their eyes are this big, and they say, I can compete at any level, because they're figuring it out mentally. Their confidence is going through the roof. And, you talk about, being physical from a presence standpoint. These college coaches want that, right? They see that, not only like you mentioned, to be able to hit the ball further, but they're thinking, man, can this 170-pound athlete that don't have that physical presence, can he compete all spring? Is he going to be the first one that gets injured because he's not able to compete? Can he go on the road and play this many games and keep his nutrition dialed in for he's continuing to maintain or continuing to grow? And the answer is usually no.
We are going to talk in our next segment a little bit about what Jeremy just talked about there with regard to the ability to manage the workload that college athletes are going to be asked to manage and carry, and how that is more sustainable with regard to the ability to carry it out through 8 to 11 months. But we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Athletes' electrolytes matter, but you got to choose the right electrolytes. If you look at the sugars, 34 grams, the dyes, all the things that's not good for you in this product, this is a hype product. If you look here at the electrolytes made by CorVive, it's got the right amount of magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, kosher salt. It's got vitamin C to help with the immune system. I'm telling you, if you want to stay on the field, you want to perform at your best, you want to recover well, this is the product that you need to choose to fuel your body as an athlete.
Jeremy, one of the topics that we often talk about with regard to the nutrition piece is that this is really about restorative sleep, about mental clarity, about the ability not only to move weight and perform athletic, skill sets as a student athlete, but more as a quality of life. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about some of the athletes that you've worked with, where they begin to see the benefit with regard to overall health and overall ability, concentrate easier, focus, those types of dynamics to the nutrition and the supplement programs that you offer.
Oh, absolutely. I've got a pitcher down in Mississippi, lefty, 6'3". We started off at 170. He's at 200 pounds, threw a 100-mile-an-hour pull down the other day, and he's made a comment several times what difference it's made in just his academics, the way he feels, the way he sleeps. It's his dad has mentioned the confidence. We talked about that a few minutes ago. He's just a different young man. And again, it goes back to because he has made a commitment to excellence. He's made a commitment to doing the right things. I know we talked about sleep in the first episode. And what happens is, Walter, when an athlete dials in their nutrition, they're pushing more weights. When they push more weights, they want to eat the more food. Well, because they pushed more volume of weights, they're getting more out of the workouts. They're tired in the evenings instead of playing video games, so their body is demanding rest. And then because their body demanded more rest, they got more rest, they wake up more energetic to start this process all over. I one of the things that during this vacation time that we're about to go into, and we did it in Thanksgiving, I tried to educate my athletes. Look, you do not get off your schedule here. You get up at 7:30, you get you a breakfast, get you a light lift, and let's continue down this schedule because we don't want to rock the boat. What we do here is work on a continuous basis. Not that they can't have a day or two off. I'm not saying that, but it's very important because now their confidence is up here. They understand the importance of nutrition, and it just turns them into a different young man.
One of the cliches or the terminologies that a lot of college coaches will use, particularly when I'm asking them about, okay, what type of athletes are you looking for? What positions? Really, at the end of the day, they're looking for separators. In other words, the margin of talent is so razor thin that they have to really go across a lot of different dynamics to the student athlete, whether that be academics, whether that be, obviously from an athletic skill set. But one of the biggest separators for college coaches is how those prospective student athletes handle and manage routines, daily disciplines, time management skills. So one of the things that I would love for you to discuss is when you're dialed in with regard to meal prep, when you're, dialed in with regard to your sleep, your supplements, all of those things that go into and lead into strength, endurance, and the things that are needed to be an athlete. It's a separator. Talk a little bit about that from your dynamic, the athletes that you're working with, and why they feel like it's a competitive edge once they get started with you.
Well, Walter, there's no disputing field athletes adapt faster and stay on the field longer, and they're a better individual all the way around.
Right.
It's just you can't dispute it. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on this episode, but when they wake up on a mission, I talk about winning every day. When they get up every day and say, I have no problem eating my calories I need to eat. I have no problem hitting my supplements. I have no problem on hitting my workouts. It just turns them into a totally different animal. One of the things I talk to my athletes about too, just being a leader on and off the field. When you go into that classroom, we're looking at that teacher, shaking their hand after the session and saying, thank you for pouring into us student athletes. You're not in the back of the room playing grab butt. You're in the front being a leader. And it just totally opens up this athlete's mind of thinking of saying, I'm a champion on and off the field because I can accomplish my nutrition, my supplementation, my workouts. There's nothing I can't do. You work with athletes over and over, the importance of having good grades. Well, most of the time, your athletes that can dial in their nutrition, take care of business at home, they're the ones that have the best grades as well. So every bit of this is tied together. Every bit of this is tied together.
One of the, I often, when I'm working with parents, I know you talk to a lot of parents, but oftentimes once I get into the mix with a parent, particularly when we're doing a stream call and I try to get them to understand, because they're coming at me with, well, what tournament should we play? What college camps should we attend? What about this type of, should we go down and work out with this instructor, et cetera? Let's talk about the role that parents play with regard to this process, because oftentimes, we try to obviously talk directly to the student athletes, but when it comes to the insignificance and the importance from a parent's perspective, now you're living this now. You have 2 sons. I had 2 sons. They're older, but the role that parents play with regard to charting that course from meal prep and nutrition and strength, and keeping a consistent journal and a very proactive capacity with regard to nutrition. What role should parents play, particularly in your mind, as it pertains to making sure that their student athletes get started at a very young age? This is more important, one could make a case, than say pitching lessons or arm care velocity program. Nutrition is really where they should start.
Yeah, Walter, I tell you, I know we're going to talk about this on the next episode, so I don't want to get into it too much, but I'll tell you this right here. Most of my problem with nutrition, and I might get some hate messages from this, but is it okay if I tell the truth?
Oh, yeah.
Most of the problem with kids like 12, 13, 14, getting their nutrition dialed in, it's laziness from the parents. And I know that probably is not received real well, but when I build a meal plan and I start talking to these parents, they're like, so we're going to have to meal prep all this? We're going to have to cook? I've got a dad down in Georgia. His son is 13, excellent athlete, 113 pounds. His wife is a CEO. He's basically like a single dad. In that first conversation, he goes, I love everything you're hearing about, what you're telling me about, but we stop at Chick-fil-A and we grab this. We're driving to Alabama 2 hours, 3 hours to get lessons. So you're telling me I'm going to have to cook all this? And I said, yes, sir. And I said, but it'll be the best investment ever. You just told me you was driving to Alabama 3 hours twice a week for a hitting lesson because that's the best hitting coach in the country. You're doing that, but you're not willing to feed your boy. His boy has gained 3 pounds his first week. And he's like, Jeremy, this has been the greatest decision I've ever made. So the parents has to be an investment, has to have the investment as well. They have to look and say, oh, man, let me back up here. Yes, they are right. Walter's telling the truth. I'm taking him to pitching lessons. I'm taking him to hitting lessons. I'm taking him to here. I'm taking him to there. Why am I not paying attention to nutrition? Because if my son is sleeping better and 5 pounds heavier and 10 pounds heavier and 15 pounds heavier and getting stronger, Yes, that's probably one of the most important things. I've got a nutrition class I spoke on recently, and one of the dads asked the question. I had a pro ball player on. He's like, where can I take my son to the best hitting instructor in the country? And he's 15, Walter, but he's 150 pounds. And after my guest was done, I said, hey, here's my advice. Get him to 175. Let's keep hitting. Don't get me wrong. It's a skills fundamental game. We got to keep swinging the bat, but let's get him, put our attention into getting to 175 instead of flying across the country to a hitting coach. Let's put our focus. So is it an investment for the parents? Yes. Is it the greatest thing a parent can do is bring families together through nutrition at a kitchen counter on the Sunday afternoon, helping that athlete figure out how much protein, carbs, and fats they need for the week, how many calories they need, making all of their breakfasts and lunches together as a family, letting the athlete know how to lay out his snacks for the night before. And then at dinner, you can cook a dinner together as a family, knowing what your athlete needs, calories and macros wise. And I'm telling you, if parents will just understand this is the greatest investment they can make in their athlete, not only to prepare them for you helping them get placed into a college and give them the guidance of where home would be for their next part of their career, but this nutrition side will carry them for the rest of their life.
You know, I want to emphasize and I want to make sure that parents really take this message to heart. Let's take a quick listen to Bill Salento, the recruiting coordinator and associate head coach at Wake Forest. Take a listen to what he has to say on this topic. What kind of advice would you give to those younger athletes that are kind of on the outside, trying to look in and wanting to be a part of that? How would you tell them to best prepare? I always try to tell them to stay focused on the windshield. Don't pay attention to the side mirrors or the rearview mirror. Just focus on yourself, get your body ready. But how would you get those younger players to best prepare for when the bell does ring, whether it's their August 1st of their junior year or really their senior year in high school?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question. I think that's the biggest piece of low-hanging fruit in today's world. We used to spend tons and tons and tons of money on exposure.
Right.
Exposure for a 7th, 8th, 9th grader, you don't need it. I can't recruit you. Nobody can recruit you, right? 10th grade, you can't recruit you. So my suggestion is spend every dollar you'd spend on that on yourself. Invest in yourself, right? Spend that money. Get into the weight room. Spend it on nutrition. Because here's your challenge. Your challenge is greater than ever. There's a 34-man roster. We have a 34-man roster. You need to walk onto campus ready to play. There's no more red shirt. There's no more, he's going to be ready as a sophomore or junior. You need to walk onto campus ready to play. How can you put yourself in position to do that? Play against older players.
Bingo.
You don't need to go somewhere else. Challenge yourself.
Right.
You know, everybody this time of year, for example, college kids are all at home. They're building up for the spring. Those guys are going to get on the mound here shortly. Get at bats against those guys, right? If you're a catcher, catch those guys, right? We do the same thing with our guys here. I just left our field. We have 12 or 14 of our guys from Rhett Lauder on down through on the field, right? What do I want our guys to do? Guys in the big leagues. Get at bats against a big leaguer, right? How do you get better? You need the feedback of failure. Seek it, find different ways. The other thing I'll tell you is find people and surround yourself with people who are going to tell you the truth. It's hard in today's world, right? We're in this world where everything's on social media, right? Everybody is seeking your business, so they tell you what you want to hear a lot, right? Find the truth tellers out there. It's the best thing you can do. A lot of times those guys are free, right? The high school coach, a lot of times a truth teller. Find that guy.
Billy, coming in hot. I want to end on this, and that is some exciting news. You and I have decided that we're going to do a collaboration with regard to working with parents, and I would love for you to just take a quick second here to let parents know that you're going to be working with all of the athletes that we're working with over at Baseball Blue Book to help them with regard to getting started with their meal prep and their supplementation programs. Talk a little bit about how excited you are about being able to offer this to families and athletes.
Yeah, Walter, what you and Baseball Blue Book is doing is phenomenal. You know, there's a little information out there in the marketplace, but there's not the right information in the marketplace. And when you gave me the invitation to say, hey, would you be willing to step in as we are consulting these athletes, trying to educate them on what they need to do to get prepared to play at the next level? Would you be willing to help them with their nutrition? Of course, I'm going to jump on it. You know, the athletes that you've already brought to the table, seeing how their lives are changing, that just fuels my passion even more. To know that you're not just giving them a little bit of guidance and consulting that you've known as the GOAT in this industry. We know that. But now that you're saying, okay, yes, I'm good at what I do, but don't forget the number one part, and that's getting your body ready. Yes, I can help you with your mindset. Yes, I can help you determine what feels like home for you at the next level, making sure you find a coach that's going to take you and develop you and help you go to the next level and then have an opportunity to even go to the next level. But Walter, I appreciate you and Baseball Blue Book for understanding the importance of nutrition. And this is something I'm extremely proud of, because this introduction part of nutrition is going to change athletes' lives forever.
Absolutely. And I want to let parents know that you're able to just click the link below and down below in the description. You can get started. You do an evaluation, a consultation, both Jeremy and I, and it helps the younger athletes truly build the foundation that they need. You know, Jeremy, I want to say thank you. I think this has been a great episode. I'm looking forward to continuing this. Folks, this is the process, not our process, but your student athlete's process. And this process is for any athlete in any sport, male, female. All high school athletes need proper education when it comes to nutrition, and you need to start it yesterday. This isn't something you want to put off until your junior or senior year in high school. So, Jeremy, I'm looking forward to continuing over the next few weeks. More and more of these episodes go out, more and more feedback that comes back. I'm really excited about taking the process to the next level.
Absolutely, Walter. Build the athlete first to showcase something worth seeing. That's what we need to do. Build the athlete first and trust the